Looking at our schedule, so thank you to Vance and Angelica for our reflections from the Indigenous community, as well as cultural and environmental healing. And it was just a beautiful time. So thank you to that. This coming hour at 10, we're going to be hearing some reflections from the interreligious community in terms of the religious community working together and how that bears on social justice as well. I just want to say thank you to how today is being powered. It all came together by San Antonians for San Antonians. This was an all volunteer effort in a sense, but being powered technically by the San Antonio Community Resource Directory, which you can check out at SACRD, we call that sacred.org. It's a directory of resources that are offered by congregations and nonprofit orgs, government agencies, and compassionate groups in San Antonio, really trying to get those resources that are needed, really needed now, in closest proximity as possible to where people need them. They're really also looking for volunteers right now to make sure those resources are as up to date as possible. And that's something that can be done and needs to be done at home. So you can see the email there if you're interested, info@sacred.org. Just to keep you informed about how this is working, people can come and go from Zoom as they wish throughout the day, but also on YouTube. The meeting may fail, just so we've not done this before, so be compassionate and kind and understanding. So it may fail. If it does, just take a deep breath, and Bill with Sacred is going to reboot the whole thing and just come back a little bit later. Remember that we're on many platforms here, and when we're in this Zoom, it's live stream. In one sense, we're no longer anonymous, so just kind of keep that in mind while we move forward. One thing that I did want to share, and we will be sharing some things along the way, but I did find out from the mayor after our time together this morning that a new practice is happening daily in the city at 6:10. So you might want to write that down at 6:10, and all the local TV networks, there will be an update on the pandemic response. So that would be a good time to tune in, and also looking at adding some reflection there as well. So you might take a note of that. So we're moving on to our next conversation, again, interreligious reflections and social justice. It's being co-hosted by Mehmey, who serves on the Religious Discrimination Diversity Action Team of this initiative. He's also a board member of the Raindrop Foundation. We've got some folks who are joining him as reflection partners, and you can see them listed there, hopefully on your screen. And I'm going to hand this over to the co-host, Mehmey.
Good morning. Good morning, San Antonio. Good morning, folks. So thank you, Anne, to bring all of us together. I'm going to join with Dr. Larry Hufford, Dr. Rajam Mahmoodi, Sister Martha and Kirk, Jan Puckett, and Russell Krummell. And so we have 5 people, so I'm not going to talk more. I will start with Dr. Rajam if she is ready, and get her insights and what she thinks about the day of reflection.
Good morning, Mehmet and everyone. I think it was March 4th when I finished a dance class, and I was driving home listening to NPR, when the proximity of COVID-19 hit me. From that moment until last night, when I really sat down to think about what am I going to say today at this conversation, I had not stopped. I had worked like a machine, very methodical, in control, worrying about my children and their families who are far away from us, bringing some normalcy to the families that I deal with, on almost a day-to-day basis through the dance class, and using the time to decongest the closet, and on and on and on. I stopped last night. I sat down and I said, how refreshing it is going to be today to take a moment to reflect. If this is the situation with me, who meditates fairly regularly, I was thinking about so many out there who may not do that, or who may not have the opportunity, time, so many other things that prevents them from taking a moment for themselves to reflect. And what if all of us made this a practice? What will the world be like?
So, Dr. Rajam,
And I will stop there.
Yeah, you are a medical doctor. I assume you receive a lot of questions about what's happening. And plus, you are a faith leader, as representing Hindu faith. So, from both perspectives, can you tell us a little bit about how you grounded, how you focus your work? I mean, in one side, you receive a lot of hard questions as a doctor, and as a faithful person, how you respond them?
That's a very good question, because I find the doctor questions are very easy for me to answer. Scientific facts are at my fingertips sometimes, and sometimes I can look it up. But some of these profound questions and thoughts are a little bit more difficult to answer. But I have been thinking about this a lot lately. And after the COVID situation started, and we are all in this situation where we are isolated from each other and from the activities that we are so familiar with, and all the guidelines that are coming. And I keep going back to my childhood, where certain things were enforced almost like a religious thing, but it was a way of life. When we came into the house, we had to leave the shoes outside. There was a certain area in the house for that. We had to wash our hands and feet. Then we walked in. And if we came from activities, certain kinds of activities, sometimes even work, we would have to change our clothes. I remember living with my grandmother, my grandparents, when I first entered medical school in a different city. And I would come from school, and grandma did not want to hurt my feelings, but I knew she really wanted me to change my clothes. And then I came one day clutching a skull and a thigh bone. She freaked out because these are not things that you bring inside the house. So, and I was thinking of all those kinds of restrictions, which I kind of rebelled against a lot, but how valid they are. And if they are a part of life, how easy it would be to ease into these kinds of situations that we are in now.
So, Dr. Rajam, we know that you are one of the San Antonio Peace Laureate. So, with your vision, the hopeful vision, how you lead the others around here, or that you work with, your family members, your relatives?
There is a lot of activities that I have been called to participate in, and all of them are online activities. For example, my family is all over US, all corners of US, and we had an hour of just meeting each other online and meditating. And for me, that meditation did a lot. It brought a lot of comfort and calmness to me. And we plan to do this every week.
Not
I
every day. Yes.
I do it personally every day, but the family getting together, we thought we'll do it once a week. And I think that is doing it as a group is always helpful. Any activity, you do exercise or you're doing Tai Chi or yoga, when you're all together, there is something about that it works a little bit better. You feel a little bit better when you're in a group. I think it needs a very high level of personal growth to be able to do things all by yourself. And I think personally, I'm working towards it, but it is not a very easily achievable state. And those who can do this very easily, my hat's off to them.
So do you have any suggestion to us that we can practice daily, maybe 1-2 minutes, not that long?
Exactly. I was going to suggest that these are all practices that have no religious connotation. All of us can sit for a minute, take deep breath in and breath out. And in fact, I used to tell my residents, the people who are under training in medical school, when there was a very stressful situation, sit down for a minute, just let go, take a couple of deep breaths and feel more energetic and charged, and you'll be able to face these things much better. And I think it is very good for all of us, especially now when parents at home are stressed because they don't know what to do with these children. It's not like summer holidays where you could take them out for different activities, or you can have all kinds of, get-togethers for the children. It is stressful.
Yeah, we are at home, but our schedule totally changed. It doesn't mean that we are at home, that we have a lot of time, that we can do many things, but we have a lot of things that we need to do with our kids as well, as you mentioned. But do you think we can make through it? You're a hopeful person and faithful person. What do you think? Can we make it through it?
Absolutely. It is only a virus. We will know more about it. It's a question of time. We'll produce vaccines, we'll produce medicines, and the poor virus will die and go. So there is an end to this. The difficulty is we just don't know when that exact end point is. But this is where the scientist in me comes out. I think it is something that can be calculated and predicted. And we have to listen to these experts. We have to listen to the experts in each field and think about it. We can't just be guessing things, is my way of handling that. Yes, there is going to be an end to this.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Rajam. If you have some last words, we will be happy to hear. Now, I'm going to jump to Dr. Hufford, ask him a couple of questions, his reflections. You are free to stay with us. Maybe there will be some questions to you at the end of our time. And as Anne mentioned, anytime you can come in and out, either YouTube or Zoom meetings. So now, Dr. Larry Hufford, good morning. He is here. He is, let me, Dr. Larry Hufford?
Yes,
Good morning. How are you?
I'm okay. Is it working?
Yeah, good.
Okay, all right.
I have a really long history with Dr. Hufford. I took a lot of class from him. So he used to be my professor, and now I call him my friend and mentor. And I always take care of his advices that he gave me. And I will be happy to hear from him today what you think about this event, a day of reflection. What's his reflections on the current situation?
Well, you can't hear me, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Well, when I first went to HEB, when this broke out and everyone was trying to hoard as much as they could, and you could barely get your cart through the aisle because others were pushing you aside and so forth, I thought that, yeah, I just finished rereading Václav Havel's Disturbing the Peace. And Václav Havel was part of the 1970s and 80s theater of the absurd in Czechoslovakia. And as I wandered through the aisles, I thought I was right in the middle of the theater of the absurd. And then I began to reflect, and I began to reflect on meaning and hope. And, you know, I went to a couple of sources, but I went back to Václav Havel, who, as you know, was imprisoned under the communist regime in Czechoslovakia. And his definition of hope is an orientation of the spirit, an orientation of the heart. It transcends the
Dr. Hufford? I believe this is the moment that we lost connection in Zoom.
not because it stands a chance to succeed immediately.
Dr. Hufford, would you be able to repeat it because we lost the connection and we couldn't hear what you say?
Ah, that's terrible. I will. Well, I was reading Václav Havel's definition of hope, and Václav Havel, who wrote this definition of hope as he was in prison under the communist regime in Czechoslovakia. And, you know, of course, he later became the leader of the Czech Republic. But he defined hope as an orientation of the spirit, an orientation of the heart.
So most probably what is Dr. Hufford is reading, Zoom doesn't let us to learn it. At the same moment, the same phrase. Dr. Hufford, we lost the connection again. We were not able to. We just heard that hope is orientation of spirit and orientation of heart.
Okay. Well, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you. I can post it if you send me the phrase.
I will send you the phrase. But,
Okay, thank you.
yeah. But, you know, I think that, you know, hope is not the same.
So I believe we lost connection one more time.
I think, you know, Martin Luther King.
Dr. Hufford, your voice is coming in and out. And we are missing a lot of important information that you are providing to us.
In the concentration.
I think it must be from his direction. We may
Yes,
want to move on.
He's out of town visiting his
Yeah.
mother-in-law.
We might, thank you, Larry, but we might want to move on.
I believe he's not hearing us as well. So Dr. Hufford, if you know about him, he is one of the person that mostly write about the social justice in different occasions. So he's a he's a professor of international relations at St. Mary's University. Hopefully, if he can share with me the information that he wants to provide, and then I'm going to post it to the Sacred website or through the chat, and then all of the audience, they can learn what he wants to share with us.
Okay, maybe I could.
So maybe it's better if we can move forward. Jen, can you continue with you? Good morning.
Yeah,
How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank
So
you.
Jen, she is with Interreligious Council of San Antonio, and she is representing the Buddhist faith. So let's start with the same question. What do you think about the Day of Reflections and why it's important for you?
I think it's very important to have a day of reflection periodically. And being a Buddhist practitioner, I'm used to doing this on a regular basis. Since I retired 7.5 years ago, I try to spend at least one day of reflecting, a period when there's no distraction, time to look at oneself, look at one's mind, and look at the kind of habits that are appearing in one's mind. And this period of quarantine, actually, I heard this statement. It says, in a pandemic, self-isolation is called quarantine, but in Buddhism, it is called a retreat. And from the cave of our own homes, like the meditators of ancient days, we can consciously kindle the flames of compassion and connection. So I think it's a unique opportunity. We're more or less globally homebound, and this is a unique opportunity for spiritual practice. And our teacher, my Buddhist teacher, Dzogchen Rinpoche, who's a Tibetan Buddhist Lama, gave a talk to the community a couple of nights ago. And he said, this is a unique opportunity for reflection regarding one's own life, regarding one's connection with the community. And usually we're so busy with all of our activities. We're going to this play, this concert, going to dinner, various activities, as well as all the day-to-day chores, let's say. We decide we need something, we go to the grocery store right away and go get it, instead of, trying to consolidate. For some people, perhaps their job is non-functional anymore, so they're home and their day is less than to make a schedule and to try to organize one's life. And I think also it's important, since we're not seeing people, is to especially reach out to people who are alone and older, perhaps. And some people may have some used to hiking and walking, so I still do that kind of activity. But for some people who may be our bodily health is very tied together. And also, we have to not forget our community as a whole. I remember, I guess a couple of weeks ago when already getting that way. This can also hit our community, and we have to think about some things before this happens. For example, the resources, and this is something that the Center for Medical Humanities and Ethics at UT Health is starting to have a conversation about. And I think this is something as leaders of our community, whether it's a medical community or they need some people forth. Do we need to treat people equally so that, you know, these decisions don't have to be made right at the last minute when people are the well-being of others. And we have to, in Buddhist teachings, it says you have to take care of yourself first, because if you're floundering, you're not going to be able to connect with them and talk with them and seek their advice. We're not here alone. I know some people are by themselves, some people have maybe a partner or a family, but there are a lot of people alone who may be having some difficulties. So I think we need to reach out as much as we can during this time without making it a complete, you know, total distraction of where you're sitting on Zoom all day long, which is not very healthy either, to live a virtual life continually. So I think I'm trying to just figure out, you know, this balance. Since I'm doing day-long retreats every day now, I'm trying to figure out, you know, what is the balance? How many Zoom meetings a day is acceptable and not drive me crazy? So this sort of thing.
Well, it's really changed for some of us that trying to work from home. So life become really virtual Zoom meetings, meeting after meeting.
Right.
Right. You mentioned an important point. So how we can do the balance between the Zoom meetings? So we have to work.
Right.
For the living. So we all are taking care of someone. If you are not going to be able to say that, oh, I'm not going to attend this meeting, I don't want, you don't have this choice. But let's say that the day-long work, do you have any wisdom or action that will keep us grounded after all of this, the meetings, everything that we are going through?
Right. I think what I said earlier about keeping to some kind of a daily schedule. So you work, but, you know, because you're on Zoom and you're sort of doing your work virtually, you can say, well, I can continue on till midnight doing this, right? But we can't do that. We have to create some kind of boundaries for ourselves. So even I understand people do work, and I really appreciate those who are continuing to do this through Zoom or whatever means they can do that. And most of it is internet, since we can't interact person to person. So I would say, like, you know, during a lunch hour, you know, you have your lunch and then you still have a few minutes, say you have 30 minutes or something like that. This is a time that you can sit and meditate, reflect, read something that will inspire you, and sit with that for a while. This is something we can do in short periods. You don't have to do a whole day retreat. You can do like an hour, you can do 30 minutes, even 15 minutes. I was just thinking of a funny joke somebody sent me where there was a man who was being asked the question, you have choice A or choice B, and choice A is you stay home with your wife and kids, and the man says, B, I'll take B, you know, so you have children around, running around, some people do, or the wife. So we have to create some boundaries, right? The work has to be work, but you have to end your work at a certain time. And then, you know, it's like my bird, since I'm home, my bird is always wanting me. He would be sitting here on my shoulder right now if I let him, but you have to create some boundaries of normalcy. Our habitual life has been sort of thrown to the wind. And this is something that can actually happen anytime, right? Our lives, we live by habits, and our habits have been completely broken. So now we have to create some kind of, it's an opportunity actually to create somewhat of a perhaps a healthier life where we're less distracted, where we can create new habits, where we incorporate more reflection and more meditation into our daily lives, and perhaps get into the habit of, I know most of you all probably already do this, of taking care of people that are alone, and even more so at this time. So I think keeping the schedule, and everybody's schedule is going to be different. So I think it's very helpful to have some kind of a structure to one's daily life.
Thank you, Jen. You are feel free to stay with us, and we might have some questions at the end. I want to ask some questions to Sister Martha and Kirk. The person who, when I moved to San Antonio, the first person that I met from other religions in San Antonio. So people, they know me that I involved in interfaith dialogue a lot. But Sister Martha is the first person that I met when I first moved to San Antonio back in 2010. And we had a lot of good conversations. And my friend, they asked me why she likes you more than us. I said, really, I don't know, but maybe I am Kurdish, this is why. Yeah, now it's time, Sister Martha and Kirk, if we can get some insight from you about the Day of Reflections and what we are going through right now.
You are so kind, and Mehmet, I cherish you as a friend. I cherish you as one of the kindest, most compassionate people I know. The wonderful sacred people were going to help me share my screen right now. Are people able to see a PowerPoint that I posted right now?
Yes.
Yes, sister.
Okay, very good. All right, I am trying. During the tricentennial, I was invited as an Incarnate Word sister to share a little bit about our history. So a lot of people have been talking about their family. The mayor mentioned his father, and we're hearing about families. I want to talk about my sister family. And I want to say, wow, a plague. We've been through this before, we can get through this again. In 1869, people were responding to the needs of the time. They responded generously. They cooperated rather than competed. We are in an absolutely beautiful time that we see people who normally compete or call each other enemies working together now. I want you to remember that in the 1800s, about 10% of the population of San Antonio had died. There was an urgent need for health care. The mayor heard that Catholic sisters had started a hospital in Galveston. He sent an urgent plea to Bishop Dubuis. Bishop Dubuis wrote to France. 3 young women came from France. They came to San Antonio. And I constantly tell my students, you know, 3 young women about your age or a few years older or younger than you, they listened when people asked for help. They came, they didn't know how to do things. They didn't know English really well. They really didn't exactly know how to be nurses, but they had open hands, open hearts. They were willing to help when they were asked. So citizens got together, they built an 8-room adobe structure. The sisters and doctors and friends started helping as best they can. This is one of the earliest pictures that we have of the sisters trying to help whoever needed help. And I want to mention 1869 was not that long after the Civil War. And the sisters said, people of any nationality or creed are welcome. The very beginning, they were helping an Afro-American man that wasn't real popular in the city of San Antonio after the Civil War. And then this is a picture with Dr. Herf. I want to mention that Dr. Herf was an excellent physician, originally from Germany. For a while, he served as the president of the State Medical Society. And he and physicians and people of goodwill and nurses from the very beginning were willing to dive right in, work with the Incarnate Word sisters. Well, people died in that plague. Other people brought orphan children and just left them on the doorsteps of the Incarnate Word sisters. So the sisters first came in 1869. By 1874, they had so many orphans to take care of. Now, I have a wonderful grandniece and a wonderful grandnephew. He's 4 years old right now. I absolutely love to go to Cuero and be with them. But I'll tell you, little children are a lot of trouble to take care of. I can't imagine what it was like for sisters to have this many orphan children to take care of. And so I want to say that I am teaching by Zoom now. I am running Zoom service sessions with Incarnate Word sisters. I see fathers with their little children coming through the room. And so I think a lot of us are in spaces with small children. I think it's very challenging for little children to have to learn online right now. But I want to repeat what so many of our speakers have been saying this morning. The mayor was saying, we are in this together. Vance Black Fox was sharing some Lakota wisdom. We are all relatives. And I may be taking more than my time to speak, but I am so grateful to be in this conversation. I am so grateful to be enriched by other people's wisdom. And I want us to realize that all around the world, we are people together trying to take care of each other. I signed an online petition. It was started by the Secretary General of the United Nations. And he said, we've got to have a ceasefire. We've got to have a ceasefire of all conflicts around the world. We are not enemies. We people, we global family, we are not enemies. We are the human family together. We've got to stop all of the fighting with each other. We've got to be a part of movements of compassion and help each other at this time. So I could say a lot more, but Mehmet, thank you for giving me this chance to speak.
Thank you, sister. If there's any questions to any of our participants, to Jen, Dr. Rajam, Dr. Hufford, Sister Martha, and Kirk, please feel free to post on our Facebook chat or the chat in Zoom. So we are expecting one more guest, but he's not here. Maybe it's time for me to share my own reflections. So the people that know me and they ask me why I'm smiling a lot always. That doesn't mean that I don't care. I really care about it, but I believe that smile is contagious. So if you get angry, the other person, he will get angry. But if you smile, the other side, they will change their face, their day. Just a smile, and it doesn't cost anything. So I'm a Muslim in our religious practice as well. Prophet himself, he suggests people to smile. And he said that smile is the basic charity that you can do. So instead of giving people hope, which is the one choice, you can make another option and to not give any hope and make them angry or desperate. But this is not the time that we can act differently. This time that we can collaborate together and we can help each other and be hopeful for our future. If you read the history, we see that there is a lot of things happened in the past. So everything will pass. And the only thing that we remember, I believe it is that our friendship, that our collaboration. So we don't want to remember the bad things that happened in the past. So,
Mehmet,
yes, Dr. Rajam.
I just want to say a few words about what could happen after this is over. I think the faith communities will have a big role to play in that phase of this whole thing, because right now we are all very focused on what is happening, how we are going to spend the day, how we are going to financially ride through this, so many important things. But once this is over is when all the mental issues are going to show up. The effect this has had on our minds. And I think we should give some thought to that phase of this pandemic and how each one of us, each one of our communities, the faith organizations, how we can play a great role in helping each other during that phase.
Yes, thank you. And we need to know that none of us is alone. Either
Yes.
we take care of our family, our neighbor, our relatives. So the way that you will act, if it will impact others as well.
Mehmet,
Mention that as a faith community, we all need to be. Yes, Dr. Hufford.
one of the things I wanted to mention when I was talking earlier,
So Dr. Hufford, we lost connection again.
Mehmet, do you have text connection with
Yes,
Dr.
I
Hufford?
have a text to him, but I want to share with you one verse from Quran that
anyone we know
yes,
that
Dr.
is afraid, anyone we know.
Perhaps he can text you what he wants to
Dr.
say
Hufford,
and you
you
could.
can text me and I can't read it.
While we're figuring that out, we're going to open up the chat room. so that other people can make comments or ask questions.
So while we are waiting the questions and comments, so that as I mentioned, it's not just for this situation. In whole my life, I have one verse from Holy Quran that I always read it and it inspired me. It's a it may well be that you dislike a thing, but it's good for you. And you may well be that you like a thing that, but it's bad for you. God knows and you don't know. So in all of our life, you might see that something happened. We say, oh, it's the worst thing that happened to me. But after a couple of times, you see that it wasn't the worst thing. It was one of the best things that happened to you. It teaches you a lot of things, or it prevents you to something bigger than what happened.
One of the questions that we have coming in, you've mentioned, Rajam in particular, you said what this important role that the faith community will continue to play into the future. But what role do you also see in terms of different faith traditions and religions working together? Is that that in itself, what is that role like?
It is extremely important for us to listen to each other. And you may be so surprised to find that our messages are so alike, so similar. And also to respect each other, and above all, not to single out anybody to blame for things that happen. That is very, very important, because when something happens, we are always looking for someone who caused it. Who did this? It is that person's fault. No, I think we need to step beyond that. And this is a message that can very well be transmitted through faith communities, the faith leaders to each other, to their own groups, their community, their congregation, to respect each other, especially during this time of stress. And the other thing is to provide information or to provide a support mechanism through the faith community for those who are going to have effects of aftermath of what is happening. In fact, in the scientific world, you have all heard about stages of grieving, I'm sure. There are stages of catastrophes also. And we are in the stage of catastrophe where we are all trying to do some things, active things, keeping ourselves very busy. But this will be over. This will be over. And when that downward phase is coming, is something to be very careful about, to watch out for each other during that phase. Because now almost all of us are calling friends we have not called in years, reaching out to family members we have not even thought about for time. But same thing will happen in that downward phase. We will all forget so many things that we have achieved during this phase, this coming together, and how we face that slowly and come to a comfortable level with each other.
We have some comments and question. First comment, I was so glad to hear Sister Martha Ann's historical perspective. Astounding to learn that 10% of the population of our city died, and that we not only survived, but thrived as a city in the aftermath, due in large part because of the many people who pitched in to help. Very inspiring lesson. Thank you. Thank you for this day of reflection. I'm really enjoying it. That was the second comment. And the next one is a question. The golden rule is a part of all the religious traditions. How does this rule translate from different perspectives into what is happening today?
May I speak?
Yes, sister.
I got a beautiful email from one of our chemistry teachers this morning, and she was thanking us, the Incarnate Word sisters, for giving a model of service, of responding in times like this. And she was saying that through Facebook and Instagram, she's getting so many messages about our students, the math, science, and engineering students who are now medical professionals. And they are in all sorts of places on the front lines responding to the pandemic. And she beautifully said, while they were at Incarnate Word, they caught on to the idea that the most important thing in life is to be compassionate, to be loving. And so I'm grateful for the students that we have right now. I am grateful for the students who are out there showing compassion in so many ways. The ripples are going out. Let each one of us be loving, be compassionate, and let the ripples of that go out.
Did anybody else want to add to that?
Yes, Jane.
I'll just go ahead.
Jane.
Oh, yes. I was just thinking that at a time like this, we really realize how interdependent we are. We breathe the same air, just even in just seeing how the virus transmit, how much connection we have with each other and how each of us depends so much on others that we take so much for granted. Even our little roll of toilet paper, we depend on so many people to, produce it, to deliver it, to drive it to the store, to stock the shelves, so many different ways. And we tend to, in our everyday life, take everybody for granted. We just assume that our life is like this and it's going to continue like that until something like this really wakes us up to the reality that we are totally interdependent as a species. And not just with other humans, but also with our Earth. When I was looking at some of the pictures of empty spaces, it was so sad. You have these cathedrals that are empty, the Pope is standing in front of this plaza and not a human being, not a living being there, except maybe some birds are hearing him speak. And so we need to contemplate this deeply, how dependent we are on each other and for our own happiness and how we also provide happiness to others. We need to take care of each other, not just those that we are close to and those that look like us or think like us, but also those beings that create problems and difficulties for us. We've become so tribal as a society and so divided. And now all of a sudden, this division has become where we're completely isolated now, so that there's no one to have a conflict with almost, and it's kind of a moment to step back and say, well, now, now what? It's a really tremendous opportunity for contemplating our interdependence.
Here's another question. As we each experience cessation of services, and I think that's replying in terms of worship and prayer services, cessation of services and the sacraments and rituals that go along with these in our respective congregations, how are each of you adjusting to this temporary new normal? From those, I'm guessing the question is from different faith traditions. How is that adjustment looking?
In the Hindu community, the temples are doing the prayer, the worship session online, and people can join from their homes, and they are all closed. We cannot go to those facilities, but there are priests who are there who are trying to normalize the situation as much as possible and providing a moment every day where prayer services are held and people can access them online.
Anyone else want to add to that?
And we have a couple of minutes left. Let me read the Dr. Hufford's
Oh, good.
quote on hope. It's an orientation of the spirit, an orientation of the heart. It transcends the world that is immediately experienced and is anchored somewhere beyond its horizons. It feels that its deepest roots are in the transcendental, just as the roots of human responsibility. And say anything about the transcendental.
Thank you for reading that. We had quite a few or several people who were going, can we hear it? Can we hear it? And I think we have one last question. How does a crisis like this shake people out of complacency from their normal lives? Is there a silver lining to this?
I think there is, and it's in the word community. And San Antonio being a city of compassion, every day there are examples of community becoming stronger.
Others from this group?
I can suggest a book. I don't know if you don't read it, the book called Our Iceberg is Melting. The one who read, it's about a story about the penguins that they thought that their iceberg, actually one person, he said that their iceberg is melting and so they need to find another place. So they had some nonos in their community who doesn't accept it, but some, they listen to him and they start to find new ways, a new place that they can live. But it happens through the collaboration, the whole community, they come together and they find a solution to the hard situation that they're facing. So if iceberg is melt, so whole colony will die. But instead of that one to accept the situation, they come together, they talk about it and find a solution. So it was a happy ending story. It's a small book, but it's really inspiring and good. Yeah. Our iceberg is melting.
Are there any last words? Because we're getting really close to the top of the hour here.
I really want to thank Mehmet Oguz, our moderator, for this hour. He works with the Turkish Raindrop House, which continually calls people together to build community. I have met more friends of all sorts of faiths, all sorts of views from all over the city. I am so grateful to the Turkish Raindrop House and right now to Mehmet.
Thank you, sister. Dr. Hufford, last words, or Dr. Rajam?
I really want to thank you, Mehmet, for leading this effort, and Anne and the faith initiative of the city for doing this day of reflection. I think this is so needed for many of us, and perhaps we can take this example and take it into our communities and have a day of reflection with each community as well, or immediate communities, because this personally for me has given a moment of reflection and respite I really badly needed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from our interreligious partners? Reflection. There's Jan.
It's just one thought that, you know, there are good people around, as I see in front of me here on the screen. There are lots of good people around that we can make connections with. And I think our community, as you said, is a compassionate community, Mehmet, and Mr. Kirk as well. And we can reach out to each other. And I think the people that are less fortunate than us, who maybe don't have the connections, we need to make sure that we keep an eye on them as well. Those who maybe have lack of health resources or internet resources. I hope that as a community that we can make sure that people can stay connected in this time of social isolation.
Thank you all for investing your hour in this and for taking the time to reflect with us as a community.